At the end of last week, West Ham United finally revealed the debt of 140 million pound, 104 million pounds. And it stems from a perfect storm of football finance pressures that hit the club all at once, all at the same time. It's been clearly stated that one of the ways to recover this debt is for players to be sold at the end of this season, whether we stay in the Premier League or not. If relegation does happen, then we all know that just about every half decent player, every half decent asset at West Ham is likely to leave anyway. But to sell top players, even if we stay up, now that's a scenario I don't think many of us would have expected. Look, if you're new to this channel, or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before, there's a QR code that's appeared in the top corner. If you'd like to become a subscriber, free of charge, just click on that QR code after the video and you become a subscriber of the channel. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button and the hype button that's below the video. So, the club's own published accounts and reporting has painted a very clear picture of why the numbers have swung so dramatically. There's been a collapse in profits from player sales, but there's hardly any surprise there, is there? I've been saying for as long as I can remember that our bad transfer business will eventually catch up with us. And bad player transactions have gone on for what, a good 10 years or so, if not longer? Under Pellegrini, we bought players like Sebastian Haller for £45 million and sold him for half that money. Other players like Anderson came in at something like £38 million, and he went for literally only a couple of million. And it has gone on right up until the present day. Nikola Vlasic, Gianluca Scamacca, Naifa Gerd, Max Kilman, James Ward-Prowse, Nicholas Fulkrug, a whole host of players to demonstrate just how bad our transfer business has been over the years. All these players bought at a high price, and those who have left have gone for far less, and those who are still at the club will end up leaving for a fraction of the price that we paid for them. And this is all down to the lack of strategic approach in player purchases, no proper transfer strategy, no proper director of football in place. I've lost count at the number of times I've done videos to talk about this thing over the past few years. We allow managers with different philosophies to come in, rip up the squad that's been built by the previous manager in order to start all over again, whilst discarding expensive players without any care. Moyes did it when he took over from Pellegrini. Lopetegui did it when he took over from Moyes. Potter did it when he took over from Lopetegui, and now Nuno is carrying the load to have to offload unwanted players that he's inherited from these last three managers. But I've no doubt that when Nuno finally leaves West Ham, his successor will end up doing exactly the same thing, discarding unwanted players at a fraction of the money that we bought them for. Why? Because yet again, the manager has been given carte blanche, Nuno has been given carte blanche to go and get the players he wants, rather than following a philosophy, a strategy at a club where all the manager has to do is come in and coach the players that are already there. Look, in 2023-24, West Ham made a £96.3 million profit on player sales alone. And that was driven heavily by the fact that we sold Declan Rice. In 24-25, that figure dropped to just 20 million, an enormous year-on-year fall. This alone accounts for most of the swing from a £57 million profit to a £104 million loss. But there are other factors for the losses as well. The club earned nothing from UEFA competitions in 24-25 season. European income had been a major revenue stream for 3 years. Losing it meant a major drop in match day, broadcast and commercial revenue. Turnover fell by £42 million with the absence of European football. But West Ham United are not traditionally a team who relies on European football for its income. So this should have been like a bonus save for a rainy day, rather than the way the income seems to have been squandered. Last season, West Ham finished 14th in the league and were selected for fewer live broadcasts because of it, which meant that TV revenue dropped from 167 million to 132 million. But we go back to player purchases, and with that came a higher player wage bill. Wages increased to 167 million pounds, which included a rise for a senior executive at the club. Karen Brady earned a cozy 1.47 million pounds in that season. Wage inflation across the whole squad continued despite our income downturn. This meant that costs rose at the exact moment when revenues started to fall. And then came the higher amortization costs. The club's spending on transfers in recent seasons naturally increased amortization charges. Now, amortization, probably pronounced it incorrectly, is the accounting cost of spreading transfer fees over a player's contract length. Higher amortization equals higher annual costs. The club explicitly cites this as a major contributor to the losses. Now, in order to manage cash flow, West Ham had to take on significant borrowing. 124 million from rights and media funding, 12 million in payday loan deals to cover transfer installments, 40 million overdraft from Barclays. These facilities increase debt and create additional interest obligations. Apparently, we've been paying around 21 million pounds in interest alone. Then there is the match day and retail income, which also fell. Ticket revenue dropped by 39 million, retail revenue by 13.6 million. But in the grand scheme of things, these aren't the biggest drivers for the losses, but I guess they add to the overall downturn. And now, what this all means in the future, in the very near future, is that the club has already signalled the need for further player trading to balance the books. Compliance with PSR, FFP is still expected, but only with tighter cost controls. If we do not sell players to balance the books, we might still fall foul of PSR. Relegation would be a financial catastrophe with an estimated £60 million plus revenue drop if that happens as well. So there is the concern that even if we stay up, we're going to lose some of our best players. But I wonder if that really might be the case. You see, I think most of the business has already been done. A number of players were moved on in January, which significantly reduced our wage bill, and that, coupled with the sale of Lucas Paqueta, would not have been highlighted in these accounts. Alongside that, the sale of players like Mohamed Kudus, Naifa Gerd, Luis Guilherme will all be highlighted in the accounts for 25-26. Don't forget that the accounts revealed last week was for the 24-25 season. So we've still got to demonstrate what we've earned and what we've spent for this current season. In addition, we also saved something like, the total bill, by the way, for the player sales for Kudus, etc., came to around 124 million pounds. Now, that in itself seems to cover the debt quite adequately. In addition, we saved around 19-20 million pounds in player wages from these players having left. Other players also left for next to nothing, but their combined annual wage contributed another 4 or 5 million pounds in wage savings. These players included the likes of Emerson, Edson Alvarez, who went out on loan, James Ward-Prowse on loan, Maxwell Cornet, amongst others. Now, with all these players gone, this paints a very different financial future. Look, I've got no doubt that we will still sell players in the summer, even if we stay up. But all of a sudden, the fear of having to sell maybe the likes of Mateus Fernandes or Jarrod Bowen seem a little less likely. But players will go, and the first of those who will go are the players who are still out on loan. So that means the likes of Maxwell Cornet. Yep, he's still on our books. Now, he'll be finishing his second loan spell at Italian club, Genoa. He'll undoubtedly go, even if it is for a lot less than we bought him for. He seems to have finally gotten over his injury problems. And although he's not a regular starter or not playing many minutes for the Italian club, the fact that he's available for selection suggests that he will eventually find a permanent club to move on to in the summer. Nicholas Füllkrug is now getting regular game time at AC Milan. And although it's been suggested that AC Milan are not likely to look for an option to buy him permanently, it's pretty much nailed on that the player will, I think, will return to the Bundesliga in the summer. James Ward-Prowse will also be leaving. He'll also have a year left on his contract, and I would imagine that he'll either go to a season-long loan or be sold again at a loss to a promoted club that comes into the Premier League, or perhaps he'll go back to the Championship and back to Southampton. Now, there aren't that many players whose contracts end this coming summer, in summer of 2026. There's Axel Disasi and Adama Traore, both on loan spells until the end of this season, as well as veterans Callum Wilson and Lucas Fabianski. Now, there won't be a lot of money saved from these players, but again, enough money to make a reduction in our salary budget. So it goes on. So we've got things like players going out. We've got players who are on who will be leaving at the end of the summer, etc. So there will be movement. There will be some action happening, but I don't think that we're going to have to really. I don't think we're going to have to really sell some of our big players. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know. I may be wrong. I don't know. I guess this summer will give us the answer. But there are players that will go, and the first on the list of the current senior squad, I think, will be Alphonse Areola. Now, he's on 120 grand a week. He's one of the highest earners at the club. He's only going to have a year left on his current contract. And given that his number one status at the club is now in question, it's very likely that he will leave in the summer. Apparently, he was offered to leave at the last summer, but he refused to do so. But I don't think he'll refuse again this coming summer. Then there's the £40 million failure in Max Kilman. He's on around 100 grand a week. He's fallen dramatically down the pecking order. He too will leave, but there's no way we're going to get anything like the £40 million that we paid for him. And then there's other players like Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Now, he's going to have 5 years left on his contract, but there may be a desire to bring in a new right back next season. Wan-Bissaka, at the age of 28, I like him a lot, but defensively, his positioning is sometimes questionable. And then there's players like the veteran Thomas Soucek. He's 31 years of age now. He'll have a year left on his contract at the end of this season, and there's a fair chance that he too will be sold. But what a great servant he's been for the club overall. Then we get on to some of the serious players, the likes of Jarrod Bowen, Mateus Fernandes, Jean-Clair Todibo, Crysencio Summerville. Look, I'll repeat, if we get relegated, they'll all be gone. But if we stay up, then I would imagine that West Ham will try to do all they can to keep the likes of Summerville, Fernandes and Todibo in particular. Still young, still can continue to improve, and meaning that their values will continue to rise. But then we look at Jarrod Bowen, and he's the last player on my list that I think could possibly go this coming summer, even if we stay up. He'll be 30 at the end of this calendar year, and with Paqueta gone, he now is the highest earner at the club, and he's still got 4 years left on his contract. I think West Ham might decide to cash in on him whilst they still can, whilst he's still at the top of his game. And I think that's if the sell. It's one of these where you look at it and you go, well, if we do end up selling all these other players on high wages, etc., Areola, Kilman, etc., then would we need to sell Bowen? Possibly not. But it's one of those 50-50s where you look at it and go, he's 30 years of age. If we don't sell him now for a 35 million pounds, we'll never get the chance again. So that's why I think maybe he's a 50-50. And if there's ever going to be another big sell to try and balance the books even more, then I guess it could be Bowen without having to touch the likes of Summerville, Todibo, or Mateus Fernandes. But as I said earlier, don't forget, we've already done a bit of business this season from the beginning of this season. We've already sold the likes of Kudus for a profit, Paqueta, where we kind of more or less broke even. So the need to sell Bowen, Fernandes, or Summerville does seem a little less likely. I hope I'm right. I hope I've done my figures, but tell me what you think.